And we're back with a quick tutorial on rocket interiors for oxygen not included. Now, when it comes to these things, you're probably going to be starting off on one of the Spacefarer modules, not the small little nose cone ones. Reason being, these nose cones, they're very easy to get your hands on, but the Spacefarer modules, not much harder. It takes 20 material science. Material science just requires this little doodad down here, and that just requires you to get your hands on some radiation. Once you've got a few rads, you can knock that out, and honestly, it should be one of the first things you're going for is the Spacefarer modules. They make exploration just so much simpler. This would be your bare bones design. This thing is, I like this design because it's expandable and it can sort of segue into multiple other things with just a few minor changes and tweaks. First thing you're nearly going to always want is a telescope. The reason you would want a telescope is so that you can find a planet that's got oil on it so you can get plastic. That's pretty much the highest priority you're going to have when you get into space is plastic. Maybe reed fiber, depending on what your goals are. But going to a planet and pulling back some glossy Drecos or getting your hands on some crude oil to make some plastic, that's pretty much your number one priority. Now, I should point out, this design is configured for people who are playing on the hardest difficulty settings. It'll work just fine for lower difficulty, but if you're playing on the harder difficulty settings, radiation is much, much more dangerous. You can only shed a third as much radiation on normal difficulty, so you have to put in a bunch of tiles here on top to help mitigate radiation damage, or your dupes will get radiation poisoning and die if they've been up in space for too long. If you're playing on normal difficulty, this will work just fine. So first things first, this is divided into 3 rooms. You've got your bathroom, your barracks, and your great hall. Now, the reason we want the Great Hall is you want your scientist who's going to be out here using this, because you will be sending a scientist. We'll do more on skill choices and how to keep their morale up later, but you're going to be sending a scientist in here. They're going to be using the telescope, and you're going to be using them to scout out the map. I'm not going to spend too long on this base design because the later ones will kind of fill in the bits that are missing. You may only be stuck with outhouses at the start because you won't have access to plastic. There's no sink here. You'll notice there's no sink because you don't have to worry about germs when you're in space. The reason being the rads kill all the germs. I've left dupes in rockets for hundreds of cycles without any form of hand washing, and they just don't get food poisoning. The rads kill it all before they can get a chance. However, this rocket is only temporary. The big problem with it is carbon dioxide is going to start accumulating at the bottom. You just want to go out, do a scout mission, come back. You may have to demolish the entire rocket just to get the CO2 out of it and rebuild it again. It's unlikely. You usually find the planets beforehand. Once you get plastic, though, you can make this far more permanent, and this whole thing is just reconfigurable. The length of your early missions will be determined in a large part by the food you have access to. If you've been saving up that muck root and meal lice and stuff like that, you can get by for a while. But generally, you'll end up running out of all the infinite shelf life foods and end up with meal lice. Meal lice is the longest shelf life food you can get, and it's producible at a grill, only requires meal wood, pretty much ubiquitous everywhere. Very handy, but it's still going to give you a limited shelf life on how long this mission can stay out there. I normally put in a second refrigerator and fill it up with anti-rad medication just to make sure that my duplicate doesn't get irradiated while they're out there. You'll probably want to put in some dirt so that they can refill the toilet, though honestly they probably won't be out there more than 10 cycles. Down here you can put down your algae to go fill up the oxygen diffuser, and then we've even stuck in one extra storage bin. But they should have enough resources to just get by, though it will be a little bit micromanagement intensive the first mission or 3. The moment you get your hands on plastic, you can drastically upgrade your rocket's longevity and survivability. First things first, though, you're going to need a little bit of research. The mini gas pumps are pretty much essential, though they do require a little bit of materials research, so maybe getting yourself a more sustainable source of rads with some wheezeworts would be a good idea to knock this out in a timely fashion. You're also going to want to research the oxalate refinery. This makes oxygenating your capsules so much easier. This is located under gases. And then there's also 2 other things you're probably going to want but are essential. One is comfy beds, though that can actually be gotten without any sort of special research. Secondly, you're going to want wall toilets. They'll save you a bit of space, though you need plastic to make them, so you won't be able to use them until you get your hands on that. And finally, the hand sanitizer is actually pretty handy. It'll allow you to get a little bit of a morale bonus. So, we rip out this toilet. That saves us a whole tile of space, which is going to become important as this goes along. And for the plumbing of this, all we're going to do is we're going to grab a plumbing pipe from here, and then we're going to run a pipe and use it as storage. Basically, we'll zigzag a pipe through here so that it stores up water blobs. This thing actually doesn't require that much water to run. If you check here, you'll notice it only takes 2.5 kilos of water for each use of this toilet. So every single one of those liquid blobs is worth 4 flushes of the toilet, which is 4 cycles. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. That's a lot of flushes. You don't even need this much. Normally what I would do is I would shorten this quite a bit. I'd only use the full length ones on some of the rockets that would be carrying more than 1 duplicate, but usually that's more than sufficient. If you want to go the full distance, you can. And normally what I would do is I'd make sure that the water coming in here is reasonably well chilled. So you notice this stuff is about 19 degrees, and I'd make the pipes out of granite. This helps drag in some chill. Every time this rocket lands, it's going to pull in cold water from over here. That cold water is going to help cool down the capsule. It's just one of those little tricks to help keep things cool. You're going to be generating a little bit of heat in here all the time, just with the duplicants and what they usually do. A little bit of chilling every time they land, not the worst thing in the world. Now that we've got that done though, we can make a few other changes here. First we're going to deconstruct that, and the next thing we're going to put in, it's going to be the hand sanitizer, but we'll leave that till late. The hand sanitizer is just going to go there, remember that, and we'll stick down a little storage bin here. That's going to hold all of the oxalate that's going to oxygenate this place. We can rip out the oxygen diffuser. Instead, we're going to put in a gas pump. This gas pump's purpose, its only purpose, is to get rid of the carbon dioxide that's going to accumulate in the bottom of the rocket. We want to make sure this rocket lasts forever, or well, not forever, but is fully sustainable and we never have to decommission it. In the past, I used to just put the oxalate container down here, and that oxalate container would off-gas and destroy all the carbon dioxide. One of the problems you face using that method, it has a tendency to overpressurize the capsule. You'll end up with 5, 10, 20 kilos of gas pressure in here, and everyone gets popped eardrums, and it can lead to stress, especially on the higher difficulty levels. So using a gas pump gets rid of all of that and keeps the place nice and livable for all your duplicants. Now, again, what we'll do here is we're just going to run this gas pipe through here, and then we're going to set out to there. This is actually an output, as in this can vent, but only when the rocket's in space. When it's landed, it doesn't allow it to vent, though honestly, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There seems to be some weird bugs or glitches on that one. But we need to make sure that any gas is pumping out of here, it only dumps the carbon dioxide. It's actually pretty easy to handle. We'll just stick in a quick gas vent there, and then we're going to get a gas pipe element sensor. A little bit of automation. So yeah, you're going to need to have a little bit of stuff researched to get that done. But then what we do is we just set this to, we want you to be only allowing oxygen out. So anytime oxygen comes through here, it will open up this gas vent and the oxygen will get let back into the capsule. Now, it can happen that this place is too overpressured and it'll still end up dumping oxygen out into space. That would be bad. So if you want, you can change that ventilation out for a high pressure gas vent. That way it definitely lets the oxygen back into the room. This means any carbon dioxide, chlorine, any negative gases that get in here at all will get filtered out and dumped at the bottom. Most gases have a tendency to congregate at the bottom right, and unless you put hydrogen in here somehow by accident, all the nasty gases you're going to bring in will be heavier than the oxygen, end up down here and get filtered. For power, yeah, oh look, turns out that just fits in precisely where that algae deoxidizer was. Perfection. Now one great thing we can do here is we can rip out this rocket control station and we can put it in here. Rocket control station does not actually interfere with this being a barracks. So if we check here, it's still a barracks even though it's got the rocket control station there. And that frees us up some space over this side because we want to put in a station. The Orbital Data Collection Lab. Right, I know, that seems a little bit crazy. But this also does not interfere with the room bonus over here for the Great Hall. So now we've got a telescope and we've got an Orbital Data Collection Lab all in one room. And this makes sure that you can send this rocket into space, it can explore and simultaneously crank you out those those lovely data banks. Of course, it requires plastic to make those, so make sure you bring some plastic with you. But this means your scientists, while they're out here scanning the stars, whenever they're not busy scanning, they can be making orbital data collection. Perfection, all listed into one rocket capsule. The rest of it can pretty much remain the same. Food, anti-rad meds, your telescope, orbital data, and your barracks in here. And you're now filtering out all of the carbon dioxide, so it should be grand. Now, before we fill this up, though, I want to start filling this with oxalate. Once the oxalate comes in, this whole room starts to oxygenate, which is perfect. Now, we're just going to wait till it oxygenates a little bit more before we stick in the hand sanitizer. You see, one of the annoying things about the hand sanitizer, and it can be a real annoyance if you're not careful, is this requires copper ore and bleachstone to be made. Now, I think what was meant to happen is the bleachstone was supposed to be, what actually provided the resource, or was supposed to sit in there and be what actually cleaned the duplicants. However, it actually is just a part of the base construction cost, so even when this is finished, it won't be full and they'll have to add more bleachstone. As well as that, when they put down the bleachstone in it to start, here, someone's going to do that, it will start off-gassing immediately. Oh. Yep, you can see there we go. If you go into gases, it's off-gassing chlorine right into the rocket. This can be an annoyance if you don't have a filtration system like this. And at the same time, what I've done is I've placed it above the storage bin. So what happens now is that oxalate is going to overwrite it. It usually destroys the chlorine before it can become a problem. It's just a nice way of getting yourself started. There we go. Come on. Go down just a tiny bit. Oh, wow. It managed to actually sneak past. All right. Good job. But even though it sneaked past, it gets picked up by this filter. Filter won't allow it through, and instead it gets dumped out into the vacuum of space. Perfection. And this over here, you can immediately disable it. The only reason we wanted it in the first place was for the room bonus. This now gives a +2 morale bonus. Remember, this is all, we haven't actually changed any of the bones of this design. It's the same from the very beginning one. At some point, you will have either done all the exploration you need, or you'll have done all the science you need. Whichever one happens, let's just say it's the science, you're done with it. A nice little thing to do is move the rocket control station over here, deconstruct this bed, and then go under furniture and grab yourselves one of the comfy ones. This won't give you, unfortunately, a single room just yet. You require a decor item. However, that's not so much of a problem. You can grab one of the corner moldings or the crown moldings. Either of these count as a decor item. So now you've gone from a barracks to a bedroom, giving you an extra +1 morale. That's what I like about this. It's very functional, and this allows you to do a whole bunch of changes as needs be. Now, as the game progresses even further, I usually convert these into shuttles for transporting people back and forth to colonies. So what'll normally happen at that point is you won't need this anymore, and you can basically stick in yourself an extra mess table that you can support more dupes, and you can rip this out and put in 2 beds instead. This just gives there you go. Now you've got a rocket that can transport 2 duplicants anywhere you want, and one of them to actually fly it back at the end of the day. When it comes to power requirements for this on the outside, I usually stick in 4 solar panels. That's usually enough to power whatever you want. Once this thing is in the air, each one of those will generate a guaranteed 60 watts. Doesn't matter where you are, so long as they're in the air, they generate 60. The rocket engines themselves can generate power, like this one here, when it's moving, will generate 600 watts, but not when it's stationary. So if it's in orbit around a planet, no power. If it's moving between planets, great, you're getting power. So usually it's not very dependable. You're better off just building this in so that you've got these solar panels here. When it comes to the battery, the only reason I put this in is so that when it lands, it actually has power to run everything. And I usually plug it into my main grid so that these things are powered. Now, if you do want to save yourself a little bit of power, you can put in some more automation over here. You basically just put in a cycle sensor. Then you want to run a wire from that over to your gas pump. And then just say, well, give me 5% of the day, I suppose. Or actually, no, active duration, say 5%. And for the rest of the day, we'll put in wherever. This means it only is active for 5% of the day, meaning any carbon dioxide that ends up there gets pumped out. Honestly, not really that necessary. If you've got enough power, you can just let it run all the time, unless that kind of thing annoys you. Alright, but this is your general all-purpose rocket for most things. Oh, and to stop duplicants coming in, using the bathroom and stealing all the food and such things, set it to grounded. Get out of there, buddy. Go use the regular facilities like everyone else. That should take care of most of your problems with early scouting, exploration, and grinding out some science in a nice, easy-to-use rocket that's pretty upgradable. However, next up we have to cover builder rockets, and these ones are, well, this is for landing on another planet and colonizing it, and these ones are a little bit trickier. For this next rocket, we're going to be using this as a completely self-contained rocket that the duplicants actually live in. This is for colonizing another planet and letting them live inside here until they've built all the necessary facilities outside, so it's a fully sustainable colony. If you're trying to land on a colony and survive without this, it's just, well, it's an awful lot harder. This makes things so much simpler. First thing you're going to need is 3 atmosuit docks. Then we're going to need a gas pump. The gas pump's required to actually fill all of these atmosuit docks. Rocket control station, our mess tables here, because we're running 3 duplicants in this. This is the most I figured out how to cram in here without actually causing problems. So having 3 mess tables and running 3 atmosuit docks just seems to be about the perfect number. This here turns this entire area into a mess hall. It's exactly 14 tiles in size, but, you know, it's kind of okay. It's just, there is a limit to how much space you have. Well, stick in 2 fridges here. One will hold the anti-rad meds, one will hold your food. Next up, we've got your toilet. That storage bin is actually going to be where the oxalite goes, and in the middle we'll have hand sanitizer in a minute. And then finally there's the bedroom. And there's no way it just turns out it's easier to stick these in than putting in the ladder beds. The ladder beds, it seems, not nearly as useful. I was hoping to find some way to use them in here, but nope. Also, for plastic tiles, I would advise you to put just a couple right there. The reason being, it's just, there's too many rads otherwise. This is 188 rads, and there's going to be a duplicant sleeping there. And 188 rads during their entire sleep cycle might be a bit much. That drops it to 60, which makes it just about livable. I mean, just about. As well as that, we've got this gas tile there, though you probably can rip that out if you want. And stick in another plastic tile. That should make the radiation here just a little bit more livable. Over here, we're kind of stuck, though. We have no choice but to just eat the rads on this side because, well, that's a 12-tile room. That's just as small as it can get. And this is also a 12-tile room. So these rooms can't get any smaller, so no more insulation is allowed. That's why you're definitely going to need anti-rad medication when you go on these trips. For this toilet, I go overboard. Namely because you're going to have 3 duplicants living in here, you're going to go through the water 3 times faster. And you're going to be working on planets probably for hundreds of cycles, so it's really awkward when you do run out of water. Do yourself a favour, squeeze in as many liquid pipes as you can. It'll make your life just that little bit nicer in the long term. Then it comes time for hooking up this gas pump. And the thing is, we need to put some gas filtration on this, though we've got a problem. You see, we'll be putting the oxalate in here. We'll be pumping it out with this gas pump and filling the atmosuits from this. So we'll be able to carry 20 tons of oxygen with us, which is better than actually putting a capsule on this. Like, you could put an oxygen capsule on this, but that's going to cut down on what you can use this rocket for. So you're better off actually cramming the oxygen inside here, and it just makes oxide so much more powerful. However, we do need a way of making sure that no bad stuff gets in here. Unfortunately, we're kind of limited on a few things. So we're going to have to put in a slightly suboptimal filtration system. This next bit is going to be a little bit weird, but it'll all make sense as we go along. This is just too much experience of messing around with these. We want to run a duplicate in here, say we've got Ratveer, and then what we want them to do is unequip their lead suit. At the moment they unequip it, a whole bunch of carbon dioxide comes out. Not, well, a huge amount, but enough that it's going to fill up the capsule. Then what we do is get them to put the suit back on and send them on their merry way. Go on, put that back on and get out of here. You're going to get irradiated if you stand around much longer. Alright, there we go. Go on home, sonny. Now what this has done is it's filled the capsule with a little bit of carbon dioxide, and then we're going to use that to prime our filtration system. So, down here we've got our gas pump. All we've got to do is hook up the power to it. There we go. Now, this is hooked up to this gas pipe, which feeds into this gas valve. This gas valve is set to 1 gram, the smallest amount it can possibly do. So as this goes up here, it's going to get filtered around, and now we have primed the loop. Done! So now that the loop is primed, let's go grab ourselves some oxygen. Now, we'll get some consumable ore in here, and there we go. Perfection. So now that the oxide is in here, it's dumping oxygen into the room. The oxygen gets picked up by the gas pump sends it down here to go into the atmosuit ducts, and all of the carbon dioxide gets filtered out and sent out into the background of space. Now, there is one minor change we need to make here. We need to make this go a little bit further around. You see, there's a little bit of a problem here. What happens if you land on, say, I don't know, a water planet? Because if you land on a water planet, you're going to have a few difficulties. Namely, you won't be able to vent this stuff when you're landed. So let me do a little bit of reconfiguring here. There we go. So if you land underwater, you won't be able to vent this stuff up when you're out when you're landed. Normally what I do in every single place where I've got rockets landing, I've got little gas vents coming off the bottom here. So if you want to vent stuff out, you totally can. You can dump it out into the background of space even while the rocket is landed. If you're underwater, that's a little bit trickier. So giving yourself some extra gas vents here, it will really save you an awful lot of hassle, because if you let this back up, the carbon dioxide will actually go along here and start damaging your atmosuit ducts. And if they get damaged enough, well, you're going to have problems. Now, one thing you need to be really careful about here is letting chlorine in. The problem is this thing is only designed to filter out carbon dioxide. We can't redo the system same as the old one where we only let oxygen back in, because if you do that, well, this pump has to be on literally all the time. You'd have to set up a whole bunch of complicated automation to stop it. It's just filtering out just the carbon dioxide makes it far simpler, but it also gives us a vulnerability. If chlorine was to get in here, it would keep getting fed in here, and every time it hits one of these, it causes element damage, and that would still give off all the chlorine, which would then get pumped in again and keep doing element damage over and over again until you've destroyed all your atmosuit ducts and you've run out of repair material. So really, don't let any non-oxygen or carbon dioxide in here. It's going to cause problems. Don't go storing bleach stone. Which is why, when it comes to putting in this, well, you know what? Let's show you. Here we go. Arctic Fox has just brought along the copper, and then Millington is showing up with the bleach stone. So we're about to have some chlorine start trying to off-gas in here. And you'll notice we've built it right beside this storage bin. It should hopefully, no, not always though, it should overwrite it. Oh, you managed to escape, you sneaky... Oh, damn it. Well, in that case, we've got a problem. We've got to remove this before we let the rocket take off. Otherwise, this is going to cause unbelievable difficulties. So, we're going to get the gas pump pumping so you can see this monstrosity in action. Where is that chlorine? Come on. Oh, there we go. It's grabbed it up. That's going to get stuck out that direction. Oh, element damage. And oh, look, it's right back again. You see, that's the problem. It's just going to infinitely recycle and cause us huge amounts of problems. Now, if you've got the snips tool installed, you can just disconnect it when it's in a pipe, and then we can do something about it that way. For example, you could just grab it here, snip it, and then, build a bridge here to exit it out. If you don't have access to that, well, you're going to have to lock a duplicate in here and get them to deconstruct the pipe when the time comes. It's pretty much your only hope. But for this time, what we're going to do is grab a gas bridge. There we go. That gets rid of the chlorine, and now we can use the system again. I will admit that feels a little bit cheaty and easy to do, but otherwise it's just a real annoyance. Another thing you can do is get rid of that mesh tile actually, and replace that with a solid tile. That should make it much harder for that chlorine to get past this storage bin, and the storage bin should overwrite the chlorine pretty much consistently. Actually, you know what? Let's try this one more time. Here comes Arctic Fox with our bleach stone now. Let's just make sure it works this time around. Come on. Yeah, there you go. Chlorine. Get overwritten. Perfect. Alright, so to avoid the nastiness of having to deal with the chlorine escaping, maybe just to put in that tile first. You can always swap it out for a mesh tile. It's not 100% necessary that you need the mesh tile there anyway. As for the carpet tiles, they help with stress. A minus 15% to your stress, especially while they're asleep and when they're eating, will really help counteract any stress reactions they encounter on other planets, especially dealing with all of the nasty situations they're going to be in. Here's one we built earlier. Now, the last thing you're going to want to build is the atmosuit checkpoint. In fact, I would advise you to leave the atmosuit until you're in the air. Otherwise, your duplicants will come through here as you're building in space, and they'll probably drop off whatever they're wearing. It causes all sorts of complications. And before you take off, the first thing to do is delete the beds. What I like to do is put in a bunch of storage containers here to bring along the necessary construction materials for whatever we're building on the other side. Say, steel, always very good because it's very flexible. Thermium, also a good one. Plastic, you're going to need that for steam turbines and a whole bunch of stuff. Ceramic, you can never go wrong. Some reed fiber to repair your suits. Yeah, and a few spare atmosuits as well. About 3 spare atmosuits, 3 in the docks. About 20 reed fiber just so you can repair your suits while you're there. And a bunch of the basic materials. Trust me, you'll mess it up and you'll figure it out after a while what exactly you're going to need. This, and then once you're in the air, you can always just deconstruct these again and replace them with the beds. Done. When it comes to colonizing other planets, I would recommend 2 rockets. You can get by with 1 at the start, but I would definitely recommend 2 because you're going to need a lot of skills to do a decent colony and to do it quickly. 3 duplicants just can't do it, and landing 2 rockets makes things much faster. Let's go through the skills you can use. Oh, actually, let's go through one thing here. This is the rocket. We've got yourself a barracks for the +1 morale, washroom for +2, and a mess hall for +3. So 3, 4, 5, you're getting 6 morale here, and as well as that, for the food, I would heavily recommend berry sludge. Gives a massive morale bonus. +8, that's just incredibly high. And you're going to need these rad pills because your duplicants are going to be going in and out of these rockets, and space is heavily irradiated. Depending on which planet you're on, this could be very, very painful. So definitely bring along anti-rad medication on all of your building trips. And it's probably going to be one of the biggest limiting factors on what you're doing because you can only carry 100 of them with you, which means you're going to get 33 cycles between launch and return to make sure that all of your duplicants are going to be anti-radded up. Otherwise, you're going to be launching them over more pills, or you're going to have to load them and put more rad pills on the takeoff. Now, before we go into skill choice, I should probably go over launch procedure. You're going to want to crew up the rocket here, and then you're going to want to make it none so they can actually use everything, but then you're going to want to make them unequip their suits. I usually bring them in rad suits, but they're going to be using atmo suits when they get to the other side. Then, once that's done, we have 1 duplicant here who has a bit of a problem. That's Millington here. They're a nightclaph, whatever. They're afraid of the dark, so we're going to make sure that they're assigned to this bed. The reason for that is they're actually beside this plasma lamp. It's one of those rare artifacts you can find. It's the only one that actually gives off light as far as I'm aware. So that means they won't be asleep in the dark. And it doesn't interfere with anyone else, and it doesn't take up any space. That's... normally you wouldn't have someone like this in a rocket, but it's just the way it worked out. Another thing you're going to do is need to change their diets and change their access to meds. The first thing you're going to want to do when you start making anti-rad medication is make sure no one is allowed to take it. The way it's configured currently at the moment is if any duplicant has access to anti-rad medication and they get exposed to a single rad, they'll go along and go grab some of your anti-rad meds, which means they just are constantly eating through your rad medication. So what you're going to want to do is once your duplicant gets on a rocket, there you go. Equip them so that they can actually grab the rad medication. Otherwise, you're going to end up with problems. Now, where's the second rocket? Over here. See Brendan as well. You can see they're glowing green. So we're going to give all of them anti-rads as well. And the first thing they're going to do is they're all going to go down now and immediately grab some anti-rad meds. Now, anti-rad meds is not perfect, but what it does do is it decreases the amount of rads they get by -100 a cycle, which counteracts the amount of rads they're going to be absorbing while in the rocket. Trust me, very important, otherwise they're going to be puking everywhere. Again, this is all dependent on difficulty level. And if you're on the lower levels of difficulty, they'll automatically shed 100 rads with the toilet. On the higher difficulties, they only shed about 33. So what kind of duplicants make good construction astronauts? Well, that all comes down to skills. You see, there's 3 things you're definitely going to need when you're out constructing on another planet. The first thing you're going to need is super duper hard digging. Otherwise, you can't dig out diamond and obsidian. The obsidian being the big one, otherwise it's going to limit you on what you can do. I would also say you definitely need mechatronics engineer. There's a bunch of buildings you can't build, including some of the power plants and things like that, unless you have the mechatronic skill. You also can't build automation, auto sweepers, things like that. So this is definitely one of the skills one of your duplicates is going to have to carry. And finally, I would recommend demolition. The level 3 building skill allows you to deconstruct gravitas buildings. So those annoying light fixtures and plastic ladders they leave lying about the place. If you can't do that, it's going to interfere with some of your builds. So this would be not essential, but I would definitely recommend you have that as well. So those three would be the main ones you're looking for. And Zap is terrible. Now, it's not that they're a bad duplicant, it's just they don't really have anything too useful. If you look under morale, let's just ignore last cycle's decor and interested skills learned for now. And only go with the good meal, mess hall, 4 shift breaks, washroom, duplicant, and barracks. That's 18. They get a plus 18 mood, excluding any interests or decor. Since we're going to be on a foreign planet, we can't guarantee decor, only inside the rocket. So there, maybe 1, 2, 3 they might get it, but we can't be guaranteed that. They could have horrible decor outside. So that just leaves interested skills, which means they're going to have a morale point of about 19 with the interested skills we've got them in. The reason being, we've got advanced research here, or sorry, 20. They'll have 18 plus 2 from these here will mean 20. So their morale should minimize out at 20. That's the minimum they should ever go to, which is why we stopped adding on any more skills. The only reason we're bringing them along is they've got amazing machinery skills and science. They're just brilliant for analyzing geographic stuff. So any kind of vents and stuff, that's their job. But they're no good at demolition or digging, and the only thing we could really put them into was mechatronics. One thing you're going to need on every single duplicant is exosuit training so they can get about the place, and improve carrying so they can actually carry stuff. So these skills are pretty much guaranteed. They have to have these, which means the only thing we could really put them into was mechatronics, demolition, or super duper hard digging, and mechatronics was just the best thing because of their machinery skills. Let's look at Millington. They're a better example of a duplicant you really, really want. They've got a passion for digging and construction. They've also got a passion for carrying. Now remember, they were definitely going to have to do carrying anyway, so that's just 2 free morale points right there. Super duper hard digging we wanted, and demolition we wanted, meaning they're getting an extra 6 skills from those as well, or an extra 6 morale. So that's 8 morale points going in. So it's a plus 8 built on top of the 18 that we're already going to have, meaning we've got a bunch of spare morale to play around with. Meaning, just say we need a critter rancher later on when we're out there. Perfect. We need someone to do a little bit of grilling, or we need someone to get into astronomy, or we need someone to do, say, plumbing or anything like that. They've actually got extra skill points, which allows us to change them on the fly while also being useful for the trip. This makes sure we don't have to worry about them having a morale break out there, while still giving us the flexibility to dump them into farming if we need to, or something. If something comes up and we need to cram someone into a skill, they've got lots of free points. Then we've got Brendan the Destroyer here. Now, while they're going to look a little bit terrible here because they've only got digging and that's the only one, meaning they're going to get a plus 3 boost here, they've actually got a little something else going for them. If we check out under morale, you see last cycle's or great meal, they've got a great meal of plus 12, despite being locked in the rocket where everyone else is getting a plus 8 for their meal. And that's to do with the food they're eating. They're a kitchen menace. And as a kitchen menace, they get a plus 1 food morale bonus. Now, the plus 1 doesn't mean they get plus 1 mood. It means the food quality is classed as 1 higher. So because the great meal actually becomes an amazing meal, they go from getting plus 8 from their food to plus 12. That's a plus 4 mood point swing, which is kind of crazy. That means it's the same as having, say, a whole extra skill tree. So if we could put them all the way down mechatronics and they'd still get they're getting plus 4 morale. So this person's actually getting 4, 5, 6, 7. They're getting a plus 7, meaning they're only coming in 1 behind Millington here, who's absolutely perfect. So that actual little food bonus, quite nice and tasty. So this one rocket is holding a digger builder, and a mechatronics engineer. Then we'll just pop down to the other rocket here. This was the other construction rocket I was using. And there we've got a mechatronics engineer who's getting a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A plus 7 morale from all of this. I tend to put them all into at least firm digging if they can afford it. It just allows them to dig that little bit more. Digging is going to be very important when constructing on another planet. David here, also another mechatronics engineer, and you'll notice they've got demolition as well. This is actually one of the better ones. 3, 6, 7, 8. They're getting plus 8 from all their skills. These kind of duplicates are perfect for their flexibility. And finally, we've got Scott here, also another mechatronics engineer and another super duper hard digging. So in total, mechatronics engineer with building, mechatronics engineer with digging. This just means both of the rockets are flexible. You want to spread them across each other. Special notice to Scott Oppenheimer here. They were actually kind of incredible. Reason being, look at them here. They're getting a plus 5 skills from this. At the same time, they've got super duper hard digging is actually completely free. It comes as one of their traits, meaning that's an extra 3 mood they're saving right there from having that. And if we check under their mood, you see they got a great meal. at plus 12. Scott here has shriveled taste buds, meaning they have a plus food morale bonus as well, making them absolutely perfection. So to sum up, a perfect duplicant for space travel would either have digging, constructing, mechatronics engineer. Those are you want at least them to have one of those, plus something either improved carry, exosuit training, and then either something to do with shriveled taste buds or one of the other traits up here. Anything that would give them about +7 to +8 morale on top of the 18 they're going to be getting just makes them a little bit more flexible and more likely to stay sane. You are going to have problems. They are going to miss out on bathroom breaks. You are going to occasionally lock them outside. They are going to pee their suit. There's going to be issues. So the bigger leeway you have, the better. The last tip I'll give you is when you land on other planets, you're going to end up with cross-contamination if you're not careful. Duplicates are going to start sharing each other's rockets and popping in and out. This leads to horrible problems. And it's not to do with sharing the toilets or anything like that. It's just a case that they look for the nearest safe place, so they'll end up all gravitating towards one rocket. So, for example, Millington might leave, a duplicant from the other rocket will come in, drop off their suit, and just hang around here, oxygenating themselves. At which point Millington can't get in, and they'll end up either peeing their suit or being unable to come back in and gain food. Simplest thing to do, put doors on the outside. Doors on the outside, you just put in some permissions, and you only allow in the duplicates that are supposed to get in, no one else is allowed out. Now, do be careful here, there is a thing where if you have ladders below it, duplicates can come up here and then sort of jump sideways and avoid the door permissions. So make sure that they're not coming from below. They have to be coming from left or right of the doors. Only way to make sure they're not accidentally slipping into the wrong rocket. Also, I like to bring a bit of coal with me and set up some coal generators on the new planets to power the rockets when they're landed. You see, you're going to have a little bit of problem when the rockets are landed because namely there won't be enough sunlight to power everything. Yeah, if you look here, these things, they're not exactly very active. There's 26 watts going each of those. And realistically, you need to keep powered not just the atmosuit docks, but the gas pump that goes with it. A little bit problematic. So bringing a little bit of excess power with you doesn't hurt. And then once you've powered in, plug it into the batteries, you're done. However, if you're on a water planet, you won't really be able to do that unless it might be difficult to get around to it early on. So what you're going to want to do is deconstruct this and put yourself in a manual generator. And then once you've got the manual generator in, you'll have to basically assign one duplicate to make sure they stay on it pretty regularly. It's very time consuming. But they can run on this and that will power the battery as well. Just a handy way if you're working on a water planet or you don't have your power set up already. One last thing, I know there's always one last thing. Another thing you're going to have to set up on every planet is exosuit forge. Now normally you're going to use its own frequently. I just set it up in the vacuum of space. You don't really have to care too much. But you're going to plug that in and that's going to be immediately one of the first things you do to repair worn atmosuits. Otherwise, you're going to run out of atmosuits on the other planet, and all your duplicates are going to be trapped inside their rockets. And you're going to want to make sure that all of those rockets are set to really high priority. You're going to have all your dupes probably set for doing building, construction, that kind of thing. So what you can do is set all of these to priority maximum like this, so that they come along and refill these rocket suits as soon as possible. Otherwise, what you'll end up happening is they won't ever have any downtime because you'll be building so much, no one will ever refill the rocket suits, and eventually they'll just get trapped inside, unable to get back out again. Also, do remember, there is no weight limit on these rockets, so you can fill this up with several hundred tons of resources. I have strip mined entire planets and crammed them into rockets, just because you could bring them back home with you, or use them as construction materials on the next planet. You can effectively fit as much as you want in here. And that is hopefully a concise explanation of how to make colonization rockets and just regular exploratory rockets. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and good luck!